will be by Philip O'Neill. Now, Philip has written a beautiful book called The Barrow Uncrossed. And in case any of you aren't aware of the title, a lot of people would ask the question about 1798, why didn't the rest of the country rise up in rebellion in 1798? Why was it only confined to a very small part of the country? And Philip concentrates on this particular area, Ballymacoda, Youghal, that particular area, and he has written a beautiful book called The Barrow Uncrossed, and he looks at Father Peter O'Neill. Father O'Neill is the man you'll see staring at you, now back to his normal colour outside the Walter Rally. But anyway, it's a beautiful book. And so Philip will tell us tonight a little bit about the enigma, and I'll pass you over to Philip now.
Thank you, sir. Just get reorganised.
No, you would have put like that if you don't.
No, I want to put it
Okay, thanks, just keep still. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, if you would, I'll rearrange the projector.
Sorry about that.
Am I still okay? You don't move.
Yeah, I can sit here, yeah.
Change this around. Okay.
You just organise me there and
Okay,
I'll take the rest.
Are you okay there now?
If you're okay, I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome everybody and good evening or good night. Just tell me if I'm okay.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah.
I'd like to thank Youghal Celebrates History for their invite to contribute to this conference. This here is the title of my talk, The 1790 Rebellion in the Barony of Immakilly and the Ballymacoda Enigma. This paper will concentrate mostly on events around the village of Ballymacoda prior to and during the 1798 rebellion. Both my parents came from Ballymacoda, so a long time ago, so it probably gives me some right to talk about Ballymacoda. I've crammed a lot into this talk, so I'd better start. Sit back and relax, and I'll wake you up afterwards. I'm not great at memorising, so I'll be reading quite a bit. What I'm going to talk about tonight is where I'm pointing at. I'm blocking it there.
Right now. Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll write my notes now. Yeah, if you can read sideways. The murder of the spy Patrick Murphy in late 1797 by the local branch of the United Irishmen and the sustained hunting down of suspects but lower barrel of Castlemartyr. The involvement or non-involvement of Michael Fitzgerald of Ballykeneely, Thomas O'Neill of Ballydaniel and Father Peter O'Neill of Ballymacoda in that murder and their respective fates. The enduring survival of the Fitzgeralds of Ballykeneely over hundreds of years. The development of the societies of United Irishmen and the lesser known defenders in the 1790s and the ready acceptance of their doctrines in the old Ballymacoda area. Number 5, the arrival of General Abercrombie as Commander-in-Chief of the Irish Army in 1797 and his introduction of the coercive measures of free quarters forced the surrender of arms. The replacement of Abercrombie in late April 1798 by General Lake, who transformed the process of free quarters into a machine of torture and destruction. The sustained implementation of free quarters in the Ballymacoda area, which led to the arrest of Thomas O'Neill of Ballydaniel and Father Peter O'Neill. And where I can, I will include Fitzgerald links. Ballymacoda in 1796. You can't see it too well. You can't focus it at all. No. This is the existing village of Ballinacota here, and if you go out to Knockadoo Road, just to Knockadoo, this was the old village of Ballinacota. This was Ballinacota Castle, and in front of it was the fair green. And all around were the houses of the village. Now this castle was the old castle of the Fitzgeralds, and it was reputed to have been built in 1521 by Thomas Fitzgerald down there. And the front of the castle was the fair green, as I said. That would have been where festivals and fairs and sports and all that thing would have been held in front of the Norman castle. Further east, you can still see the road going up to the graveyard here. This is where we were just now, and the road coming from the village going up to the hill cemetery there. And further east again was Ballykeneely, where the Fitzgeralds lived. Now the Fitzgeralds used to live there one time, and in 1796 they moved and they were now up in Ballykeneely. The father of the Fitzgerald family at the time, Pierce Fitzgerald, Pierce McCarthy, the poet, was recently dead, and his son Michael had succeeded to the lands. The Fitzgeralds of Ballykeneely. The Fitzgeralds were one of the foremost Norman families who settled in Ireland. A branch of the Fitzgeralds held extensive lands in the barony of Inmakilly, and their castles dotted the landscape. Inchiquin, Ballycrennan, Castlemartyr, Ballinacota, Ballymanu, Castle Richard, to name a few. Now this is the barony of Inmakilly, stretches from sort of Cork Harbour up to Middleton and across the Youghal, that's the white part, and up as far as, almost as far as Dungorney there. After the defeat of the Fitzgeralds in the Desmond Rebellion in 1583, most of their lands were confiscated. Sir Walter Raleigh bought huge tracts of these confiscated lands on both sides of the Cork-Waterford border. Raleigh sold these lands to a government official, Richard Boyle, in 1602. Boyle was essentially a businessman. He was content to leave the Fitzgeralds stay on in Ballykeneely on a lease. Later on, Boyle was given the title Earl of Cork, and one of his descendants was Lord Shannon of Castlemartyr. In the 1640s, the Fitzgeralds of Ballykeneely supported the Catholic Confederacy, but with the arrival of Cromwell in 1649 and the defeat of the Irish, there were again extensive land confiscations. The Fitzgeralds were again fortunate to retain their lands. The Ballykeneely Fitzgeralds supported King James before and after the Battle of the Boyne. Redmond Fitzgerald of Ballykeneely was outlawed at this time, but again the family retained the property. Redmond's grandson was the poet Pierce Fitzgerald, Pierce McCarthy, who died around 1795. Pierce was a supporter of the Jacobite cause, and his poetry showed his support for King James's grandson, Bonnie Prince Charlie. In storm or calm or peep of day, on the eager steps I seek to be, and strain my eyes and hope to greet the first glimpse of our prince's fleet. But the news was tightening on Pierce Fitzgerald, and in 1759 he became a Protestant in order to retain possession of his lands. He was obliged to attend the Protestant church at Kilcredden. In a poem he lamented his new situation. "'Tis sad for me to cleave to Calvin and perverse Luther, but the weeping of my children, the spoiling them of flocks and land, brought streaming floods from my eyes and the descent of tears." His reference to his children would indicate that his eldest son Michael had been born at this time, suggesting that Michael was in his early 50s at the time of the 1798 rebellion. These are the people I'm going to talk about quite a bit in the talk. Michael Fitzgerald of Ballykeneely, who just mentioned, the son of the poet Pierce Fitzgerald, Michael married Mary Maher, whose father was a ship owner plying his trade between Cork and Cadiz. And no doubt many bottles of good wine were brought back to Youghal and Ballymacoda. He appears to have been a member of the United Irishmen in Ballymacoda. Sometime in the first 6 months of 1798, an unsigned letter was sent to Lord Boyle in Castlemartyr, given what appeared to be a highly accurate information on the people involved in the murder of the spy Patrick Murphy. This letter is now in the Public Records Office in Belfast, and it reads as follows. Don't try to take it in too much, just look at the overall context. These lines are to inform your lordship that it was at the instigation of Michael Fitzgerald of Ballycleely that Patrick Murphy was murdered, but telling the party that himself had been credibly informed that the said Murphy was fully determined to go to your lordship and give information against the whole lot of them. James McAuliffe, Philip Neal of Avoyne, Thomas Neal of Barnfield, Daniel Crowley, Jeremiah Glasheen, Thomas Mullaney, James Hyde and several others could prove that Fitzgerald told them that Murphy would betray himself and them if they did not destroy him in time, and that he was certain that himself would be the first man that would suffer as being our head and leader, and the man that supplied them with arms and ammunition occasionally as they wanted it. Patrick Shea and Murphy's wife can prove it was Mr. Fitzgerald that lent the deceased Murphy the gun and ammunition that Fitzgerald's son had taken from Murphy's house a day or two after being murdered. Probably the main thing to do is just look at the names here, and I'll come back to this letter afterwards, and I'll call this the Fitzgerald letter. Thomas O'Neill of Ballydaniel, who was hanged in 1798. Thomas O'Neill and his father Philip were wealthy middlemen in the parish of Ballymacoda. They leased lands from landlords and sublet lands to other people. They lived adjacent to the old Ballymacoda village up to 1796, and then they moved to the townland of Ballydaniel. 1785, Thomas O'Neill married Anne Murphy, daughter of Dennis Murphy and Anne Uniacke of Clyne. This probably created a relationship to Crofton Uniacke, the local magistrate, who appeared as a character witness for Thomas O'Neill at the time of his court-martial in 1798. Based on his year of marriage, 1785, Thomas was probably about 40 years old at the time of the 1798 rebellion. And just to include a Fitzgerald link, this is a photograph taken up at the Hill Cemetery in Ballymacoda, and it's the tomb of, you can't see it there, sorry, it's the tomb of Thomas Neal and his wife Honora, who, his wife died in 1741, and some of the, there was a marriage of his granddaughter to Fitzgerald's of Shannigarry. So this is, you might not see it there, but this is John Fitzgerald in honour of his wife Mary and his son Robert. They're all buried in the same tomb. These are the Fitzgeralds, all related by marriage. Father Peter O'Neill, who you well know here, born in 1747 to wealthy parents in Connacht. He received his education for the priesthood in Paris. In 1786 he was appointed parish priest to the combined parishes of Ballymacoda, Ladysbridge and Shannigarry. He had two brothers, William O'Neill, who lived near Garryduff near Ballyknoe, and Thomas O'Neill, who lived in, I hope I read this right, Killyverily near Connacht. Just some other links of that family to the Fitzgeralds. Father O'Neill's brother William O'Neill married Catherine Fitzgerald, sister of William Fitzgerald of Castlelyons, and there were other marriages between these two families. The above mentioned William Fitzgerald of Castlelyons was the son of James Fitzgerald of Dungony and Elizabeth O'Neill, and William Fitzgerald's daughter Elizabeth married Miles O'Neill of Bulladura, who was a close relation of Father Peter O'Neill. So the two families were quite interlinked. And in June 1800, when Father Peter O'Neill was in Cork Harbour on the ship and about to be transported to Australia, he made a deed transferring his lands at Ballydaniel to his brother William. William Fitzgerald of Castlelyons was a witness to this deed. Now this is the very start of the deed, and I think you need to go to Specsavers to read it. But it reads, a memorial of indenture bearing the date 21st of June 1800 and made between the Reverend Peter O'Neill of Ballydaniel in the County Cork, but then a prisoner on board the Anne transport, then lying in the harbour of Cork, Roman Catholic clergyman of the first part, a William O'Neill of Den of Garryduff in South County, farmer, brother of the said Peter O'Neill of the second part. And then it goes on to sign over the lands. William Fitzgerald of Castlelyons signs the deed at the end, witnesses it. Lord Shannon and his son Lord Boyle. Lord Shannon, called Richard Boyle, lived in Castlemartyr. He was a descendant of Richard Boyle, the first Earl of Cork, who had purchased confiscated lands from Sir Walter Raleigh. He was a member of Parliament and spent much of his time in Dublin. Shannon's son Henry was Viscount or Lord Boyle, depending on the time period. Lord Longville of Castlemary, Tynte. He was a member of Parliament for many years. His sister Anne, ironically, married Roger Connor of Conneville near Enniskeen in West Cork, and their son, Arthur O'Connor, Longville's nephew, became a leader of the United Irishmen. I'd say much to Longville's distress. Now, the Defenders and the United Irishmen. The Society of Defenders is not that well known, but it started in County Armagh around 1784. They formed initially to defend the houses of Catholics against attack, but as the years progressed, they rapidly went on the offensive and evolved into a terror organisation. The methods of agitation were often crude and ruthless, burning ricks of straw and hay, maiming cattle, and at times the mutilation and assassination of people. The United Irishmen were formed in 1791. They were influenced strongly by the ideals of the French Revolution of 1789, and prior to that by the formation of a democratic government in America after its declaration of independence in 1777. They saw the lessening of the English influence in Irish affairs. As the years progressed, the leaders of the Defenders had contact with the United Irishmen, and they became more political. The United Irishmen supplied them with a revolutionary language with which they could articulate their grievances. By the end of 1794, Defenderism had spread as far south as County Kildare and reached Cork, County Cork, by the start of 1797. In 1795, the United Irishmen decided that reform was not going to come through peaceful means, and they started to plan for an armed revolution and to seek French military aid. During 1795 to 1796, there were meetings between the leaders of the United Irishmen and the Defenders. And by August 1796, it had been agreed to amalgamate the Defenders into the ranks of the United Irishmen. From then on, the Defenders took their overall direction from the United Irishmen, and delegates from the United Irishmen moved among the Defenders, instructing them, forming local committees and articulating their local grievances. The oath of the Irishmen took the following format: to form a brotherhood of affection among Irishmen of every religious persuasion, to endeavour to obtain a full and equal adequate representation of all the people of Ireland in Parliament. 3. Not to inform or give evidence against fellow members or members of similar organisations. Oath of the Defenders. The oath varied from place to place, but this was one that was in the Ballymacody area. I do solemnly swear that I will pay no rents or tithes, that I will use my utmost endeavours to destroy all Protestants and false brothers, and to be true to the French in case of their landing in Ireland. The term False Brothers referred to Catholics who would not join the movement. As you can see here, they're strange bedfellows. The oaths are very, very, very different, and a strange dichotomy existed between the objectives of the two organisations. It would appear that large numbers in Ballymacody area and Youghal were sworn into the defenders. Also, in those places, there would have been members of the United Irishmen, and it may have created a two-tier organisation. The murder of the spy Páirtí Murphy. This is Father William Rice's account. An event took place in Ballymacody about 6 months prior to the breaking out of the 1798 rebellion, which was to have drastic consequences for many of the inhabitants. This was the murder or execution of the government spy Páirtí Murphy, who was sentenced to death by the local committee of the United Irishmen. The Reverend William Rice, in his book Memoir of Peter O'Neill, published in 1900, described the circumstances of the event as follows. Father O'Neill warned his people against secret societies, but the people, maddened by oppressions and insults, unheeded the warnings and joined in numbers the Society of United Irishmen. About this time, an ex-sergeant of the notorious North Cork militia named Murphy turned up in Ballymacody. His wife was a native of the place. He had been convicted of attempting to swear in a fellow sergeant named O'Sullivan as a member of the United Irishman Society. He was sentenced to 500 lashes and transportation for life. No part of the sentence was put into execution, and he escaped from prison with the connivance of the authorities in order that he should become a spy and an informer. He was 3 months in Ballymacody and was actively employed in swearing in the people. The leader of the organisation of the district was a Thomas O'Neill, who we mentioned, who, while in Dublin, engaged in a lawsuit sometime previously, was sworn in as a member. Murphy for a while escaped suspicion, but was regarded as a condemned deserter who had little love for British rule. It appears that some shrewd farmers who he wanted to enrol suspected his treachery and determined to watch his movements. Lord Shannon had in Castlemartyr a cowherd who was a half-fool, half-knave. The farmers bribed his cowherd by giving him a large quantity of tobacco, for which he had a great weakness, to watch the visitors to Lord Shannon. The cowherd reported that Murphy was holding interviews with Lord Shannon and Boyle, and that he would show the three in private conclave on a certain day and hour, if the farmers would come to the old churchyard of Sepulchre, which is situated within the domain, and hide themselves in the ivy. Accordingly they went and observed Sir Murphy in converse with the two lords, and overheard them giving information. They reported the matter to the neighbours, who were greatly alarmed. A meeting was held to which Murphy was invited. Murphy attended and was placed under arrest and charged with being a spy and an informer employed by the government. He admitted the charge. They did not know what to do with him. If they let him go the road completely in his power. They sent 2 of the members to consult Father O'Neill, who, after hearing the case, gave no decision on it, but went off in a sudden sick call to Shanigary. The 2 returned and told the meeting that Father O'Neill did not say one word about what action they should take. Most of the night was spent by them in weeping and debating about what should be done, but at last they concluded that Murphy was to be shot. They took him to the ferry point at Bring, where he was shot by a man named Malloy, and another whose name is not known. His body was thrown into a deep hole in the River Fannis and covered with stones. About a week afterwards, the Inverkilly yeomen, headed by Lords Shannon and Boyle, were scouring the country. They arrested several people, and among others, Mr. Pierce Fitzgerald of Ballyconneely. When Mr. Fitzgerald was being examined to find out what became of Murphy, he remarked that probably Murphy, anticipating that a search would be made for him, had absconded. and that it was surprising that while Murphy was to be seen for the last 3 months, that no inquiries had been made about him. Moreover, that the report had it, and he was often seen in consultation with your lordships. They made no reply, and Fitzgerald was allowed to go free. After examining several informers, from which no information could be elicited, Thomas O'Neill was questioned, and he stated that if Father O'Neill had done his duty, Murphy would not have been murdered. He thereupon narrated to the Lords the tragical event. The officer commanding the soldiers, who were then encamped within a short distance of Ballymacoda, lost no time in arresting Father Peter, who they took into Youghal. Can you hear me down the mic?
Yep.
Yeah, good. I'm just going to take a drink of water. Right. You need a favour there. I hit some button there. Okay, this account was written about 100 years after the event, and as often happens with oral tradition, the time frame of events can become distorted. For instance, Father Rice said that Lord Shannon and Boyle questioned Pierce Fitzgerald about Ballyconneely. However, Pierce Fitzgerald was dead at this time. It is most probable that it was his son Michael who was present. Father Rice's description would indicate that the arrest of Father Peter O'Neill happened a week after the murder of Murphy. Documentary evidence set the date of Patrick Murphy's murder as the 24th of November 1797, and the date of Father O'Neill's arrest as the 1st of June 1798, over 6 months later. I'm gone over, well over halfway now, so arrest for the Patrick Murphy's murder in 1797. Although Rice said that Patrick Murphy was from the dreaded North Cork militia, Lord Shannon described him as a deserter from the Meath militia, who were based in Youghal at the time. Murphy's brother-in-law Patrick Shea also resided in the area, and he was another deserter from the Meath militia. He also became an informer. On the 17th of November 1797, Shea gave the following information to Lord Shannon at Castlemartyr. That he, Shea, had deserted from the Meath militia about the end of last August, due to ill health, and has since resided in the parish of Kilmacdonough. That about a month since, in the house of Michael Cunningham, shopkeeper, he was tendered a note by Richard Griffin of Reen, labourer, to be true to the cause of the defenders, and to turn out when called upon. That about a fortnight afterwards he was sworn, he was told by Michael Buckley that there was to be a meeting that night. That the meeting consisted of about 400 men and was held in the field close to the house formerly occupied by Philip Neal. That Darby Lee of Fannisk, Michael Cunningham of Ballymacoda, Darby Broder and his son David of Ballymacoda, James Deneen of Ballyferrode, and Thomas Neal of Barnfield were appointed to direct the whole body, and were authorised to fine or otherwise punish those who were drunk, as they might then endanger a discovery of their principles. Note here that it was the oath of the defenders, not the oath of the United Irishman, which was tendered. And it could be inferred that the whole of the 400 people, it says 400 or somewhere, can't see it. The 400 people present that night were sworn into the defenders. A week after Patrick Shea gave his evidence to his information to Lord Shannon, Patrick Murphy was murdered. Immediately, Lord Boyle arrested 6 of the men who were named in Shea's information here. and if the person name was not to hand, another family member would suffice. A few days later, the New Cork Evening Post gave details